What's going on, y'all? This is your boy Jeffrey, aka the official Prolific Minds. And shoot, man, this is finally something I've been wanting to do for like a long, long time. And it's just give y'all game, give y'all knowledge, stuff that I've been, going through in my journey as an entrepreneur, as a person. That kind of, you know, how to obtain freedom at its highest form. And what I mean by that is, we are all, if you live in America, then this is definitely for you. We all just live in this day-to-day life of we have to get up, go to work, make our coin, do what we got to do to either, feed ourselves, feed our kids, feed our family. And the system doesn't give you the tools to get ahead, right? And what I mean by that, it all stems and starts with the education of money. A lot of us just know that money is something that we use to go pay for stuff, and like another layer to that is taxes, right? Something that a saying that we all hear, that's only there's only two things guaranteed in this world: death and taxes, right? But as you see, and we're in like 2025, there's still not a lot of education about money, even in middle school, high school, college. And when you think about how do you acquire this knowledge, you really only acquire it when you're currently going through something in your day-to-day life. And what I mean by that is, if you have to go get a loan, if you have to, get a credit card, or, just a simple, check-ins and savings account, and putting your money away and storing your money away and savings, so that way you build something, or you have something, set aside in case of emergency. But that's like not even like the tip of the iceberg, like just scratching surface, because like I said, a lot of us know money as like this piece of paper. And this is cool because I actually had some dollars on me, like this piece of paper right here, right? And what we do with our time is we trade our time in the form of hours that accumulate throughout the week, that accumulates throughout the month, to receive some sort of paycheck, right? That's like our reprieve, that's like our reward of, doing something that we think is right. But that's how the American system was essentially built, was off of another person's efforts, like their hard-earned efforts, and in exchange they give you a piece of paper called money. But when you understand money at its truest form, this is not money, this is currency. And let me go into depth with you guys. So, you know your true wealth is your time and your freedom. And when you think about it, when you're when you clock out of work and you're able to, do the things that you want on your time, that feels like, a sense of freedom. When you get to, just like I said, just move around and do whatever you like on your terms, that's a sense of freedom. But at the same time, there's still what is called like an opportunity cost. There's an opportunity cost to everything. And what I'm trying to say is, we still and I'm including myself in this, because I was, in the system for so long, just like many of us are, without the self education, without going down the journey of keeping your curiosity, of just wondering how come certain people a certain live a certain way, and you see people who are doing the things that you want to do, but they don't necessarily come forth with the knowledge on how they did it. They just tell you like these generic terms, and like these little quotes and sayings of, you got to work hard, but at the end of the day, it's more than just working hard. It's about working smart and going down the path of self education to build the life that you want. So, what I'm trying to kind of hone in on is freedom and your time. Because those are the two things that I would say is true wealth, to be able to do things on your time, whenever you want, however way you want. And when we trade our time for money, that's we can always make more money, but the time that we've traded for that money, we can't get that time back. And money is just a tool. Money is just a tool for trading your time, and it's like a container. Money is literally the container of how we store our economic energy, and when once we put that economic energy away, or like, put it to the side, it's just waiting for us to deploy it in a way where we see fit in the benefit of our life. So this is what I'm trying to say right here. And sorry, like, I'm looking away because I have notes to try and keep me on track. Because I realize whenever I try to like talk about this, off the free mind, I tend to like lose my train of thought because I'm learning how to articulate myself in video format. So this is what I'm trying to say. There's a difference between money and currency, and it kind of starts off like over 5,000 years ago, when the Egyptians, were using gold and silver as like a predominant form of money or currency. And then now, what's like the biggest confusion is that we call this money when this isn't money. So, money and currency have a lot of similarities, but there's one thing that stands out that makes it very different. So, currency, I'm gonna keep showing dollars because it's like a way to kind of plant the seed in your mind. Same thing for me. Currency and money have a lot of the same characteristics, but one thing. So, currency is a medium of exchange. Okay, so whenever we want to go buy something, um, we have to exchange it for something. But even before that, we have to exchange our time to get this. And then once we get this, we can exchange it for, product like a cup of coffee, or, things that we want to buy, like a speaker, for instance. And it's portable, it's durable, it's divisible, and it's fungible, meaning like it's interchangeable. So if we need to go to a different country, for instance, then we can interchange this form of currency with another country's form of currency. Um, but money has, like I said, all those same characteristics, but one thing, and it's called store of value. And what store of value is, it's pretty much a limited supply of money, which is stable, which stabilizes your purchasing power. So, again, what I'm trying to go in depth with is having the difference between money and currency, because currency is just this. Again, money, for instance, is like, I would say, is gold, for instance. A lot of people would say gold is like a hard asset, something that you can put your your economic energy in, and it will hold its value or increase its value. But the only problem with gold is it's still tied to a lot of our economic system. So, in order for us to get more gold, we have to spend excess amount of dollars towards labor power to go, you know, mine gold. So gold is essentially scarce, but once gold is continuously mined, they find more of it. But it's still tied to how much money that we have to pour into that labor force to actually get it. So that's one thing. And for a while, like gold and silver, what? So let me kind of like start this over. It goes back to 1971 when Richard Nixon at the time he pretty much eliminated our dollar being backed by something that was powerful, aka gold. And what happened was all the central banks, and it kind of started off like a little bit before then, but this is like where like the cutoff really essentially happened. Was in 1971, Richard Nixon completely removed the gold standard, and when that happened, that allowed the Feds to just continuously print money, aka devaluing your wealth every time that they get to the money printer and just make more of it. And what happens was central banks were having they're supposed to have a certain amount of gold that would be equivalent or hold its weight towards the dollar. So if you had, $20 worth of gold or 20 ounces worth of gold, then in exchange they would give you that same value. Well, as over time, the central banks weren't necessarily I would say holding their end of the bargain to where they would have a certain amount of gold, but they were able to print more money. So then it kind of offset things to where you have this much gold, but they can still print this much money until 1971, where they just completely went away with gold, and now they're just constantly printing. And what a lot of day to day people like myself at the time, before I kind of went down the rabbit hole of knowledge, is every time that money is being created and put into the economic population and the cycle, uh, the things that you buy on a day to day basis tend to continuously go up in price, but there's nothing different that they do with that product. So, for example, this this cup of coffee, right? Let's say it was $2, right? But the next year it's going to be 250, and then the next year after that it's going to be 350, and then the year after that it's going to be $4, and so on and so forth. So that's just like a small example. But when you think about it, there's nothing that they're doing different with that product. They're not changing the ingredients. They're not, enhancing anything. They're just simply making you work longer and harder for the same things that you buy on a day to day basis. And that, my friend, is called inflation. And inflation only happens because of the manipulation of money. So the government or the Fed pretty much can do this at will whenever they want. And every time that they're printing money, your savings account, the money that you put in the savings, you can't buy the same amount of things that you used to the year prior. Why? Is because they're manipulating the money. And I'm trying to like break this down as like simple as I can, because I understand things at a certain pace, at a fast pace, to where now I'm working on articulating my words to where it kind of makes sense to the masses, or at least like my circle of people, the people who know me, and just kind of like break it down to where it's like very digestible. So, and again, I'm kind of like referencing my notes, and I'm kind of like going with the flow as how it makes sense. So, since the government and the Fed can print more money, we essentially have no store value. It dilutes your spending power because they're continuously printing. And what money is supposed to be like a limited quantity, which equals scarcity, which leads to the store value, which builds rarity, and that and it's supposed to stabilize and hold your purchasing power, or if anything, go up over time. And when you think about it, like right now, we're in 2025, and the natural state of everything should be going down. Like everything should be more affordable now than ever. Why? Because we also have technology. We're in this digital revolutionary era to where things are becoming more efficient and a lot easier. But when you look at it from the bird's eye view, things are still going up. Like it makes no sense to why you and I have to continuously, you know, work longer hours to buy the things that we need. And as you see, that thing that you need continuously goes up every year. And what like made me realize it was what I did was, I don't know if you guys like shop like online, like grocery shopping and stuff. And if you put in your cart, let's say like if it was like a Walmart app or Target, whatever you guys like to shop, right? You go look at like your past shopping experience to like the groceries that you guys bought, and you look at that amount, put in that same thing this year, I guarantee the price has gone up exponentially. I'm not talking about like 3%, 4%, 7%. It's probably like around like over 10% um of what your groceries were. So your buying power is actually shrunk a lot. Why? It's because we have devalued the dollar so much that it's not even funny. And I'm just kind of talking about it from like a US standpoint. I think about like those other countries that are pegged to the dollar, meaning like anything that's happened outside the US and they still depend on the US dollar, well, their inflation is probably 3 to 10 times higher than what we actually have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. And the thing is, it constantly changes. So there's never a set price for anything, which makes it hard to, look into the future and know that if you're going to be able to buy the things that you need, or even just be able to take care of yourself, your family, um, and just prepare to save for the future, whether it be retirement. You're not able to live a sound life, is what I'm trying to get at. So, this is where I started doing like some research and like going down, I would consider like this path, like this path of money, because for myself, I've always wanted to figure out how I could live the life on my terms, be free, make money and not have to sacrifice and trade my time for money anymore. And it's led me down this path to where I've gained a lot of knowledge and I'm still learning. I'm still trying to understand, but I think I've got a good grasp right now to where I can share some stuff with you guys. So like put this into perspective and check this out. So the United States dollar is not the only dollar or any form of currency that has not been successful. It's been over 600 fiat currencies that have all failed, and the US dollar is just another one of them. So, the US dollar has pretty much lost over 95% of its value since 1913, and I always encourage people, you don't have to, necessarily believe what I say. I always encourage people to do the knowledge and do your research. And yeah, once you start doing your research, you start questioning stuff. You start questioning the life around you, the things that you're seeing on a day-to-day basis, and everything in this world is just a form of a distraction to keep you away from this type of knowledge right here. So we're in 2025, so I believe that our US dollar has devalued probably a little bit more than 95%. It's probably damn near almost like 100% now. And again, like inflation is the rise of prices on goods and services, and deflation, which is like the natural state of what life should be because of how much advancement and the things that we have going on in this world, that everything should be getting cheaper. Everything should be more affordable, but it's not that way. So I don't know if you guys ever heard of the word quantitative easing. And I would say this word kind of started popping up a lot more for me back in like 2018, 2019, 2020-ish, 2021, like around that era, because of COVID was happening, right? And we all know that the world had shut down. You couldn't go out and just, roam around with your friends. You couldn't go spend. You couldn't really do anything. And a lot of these businesses were, going out of business. They couldn't keep up. They couldn't make ends meet. But when you think about that, I'm really talking about like the smaller businesses. The bigger businesses, they got bailed out. They got bailed out by the government. And what I mean by that is our system is built off debt. Everything around it is built off debt. And without debt, our system would not make it. Our system would collapse. So what ended up happening with those bigger businesses is that they got bailed out, and their form of bailout was they just printed more money. And the ones who are closer to the money printer, they're the ones that are able to reap the benefits before it gets to you and I. Because once they print more money in the system, the ones who are closest to the money printer get the benefit, get all the perks, and you and I get the shit end of the stick, is what I like to call it. Like because we have to deal with rising prices on our day to day goods and services. So that ends up leaking your time and your freedom away, and that's something like I will continuously keep saying and preaching, is because your time is more valuable than you really understand. We only get this one life, and I've always been a firm believer, and there's no way that we're all put on this earth to slave our life away for this piece of paper. Don't get me wrong, what this can do can either enhance who you are as a human being in your life, because you have to have it. We just have to have it. But at the same time, it's just a lot of corrupt manipulation behind currency and how the government and the feds is built and set up. Um, I don't want this to go too long. I just kind of wanted to start this off with like a little series, and kind of like put that into perspective to let you guys know like your time is everything. You and what you do with your time determines a lot. But you really have to start questioning the life around you and the things that you buy and what you surround yourself with, because it's either helping you and putting you in a forward position of progress and growth, or it's hindering you and it's taken away. And what this system again is, and what it's built off of, is debt. And and what it relies on is our time as individuals of a collective to pay the interest of the debt that we continuously print and make. And I'll go a lot deeper in this next section here. Um I have to like break these videos up a little bit because I can only record like close to 30 minutes at a time. So I'm gonna end this one and then I'm gonna start again, and then I'll be able to continue with this next part. What's going on? What's going on? What's going on? It's your boy Jeffrey. I'm back. So I kind of wanted to, keep going, and I wanted to keep educating y'all on the stuff that I've educated myself on when it comes to understanding money. And I had kind of left off with, by just pretty much saying that, like your time is everything, and how you spend your time determines if you're gonna get ahead or not. But to kind of like backtrack too, I did say, you know, that this type of knowledge is not being taught in school, and the only way you find it is by doing the self work, doing your research, and then just I would say keeping your curiosity level high. That's something that I can actually say that I've always had as a child. Is just I've always been fascinated with the sense of freedom. But when you look at the American system, it's not built for you to maintain or obtain uh, your individuality, your freedom. Um, it's designed to keep you in a, I would say, like a group thinking mindset, and a sense of you have to rely on the next person in hopes that they don't screw you over. And with that, just that alone, with that being said, just that piece alone, there's a lot of manipulation in that. So the best investment you can really make is self education, educating yourself on the history of money, understanding finances, and understanding like the global economy as a whole. And where I'm kind of leading with that is is our system, our monetary system, you and I on a day to day basis, and what we can do to get ahead, to live a more sound and better life. And this is just just some tidbit tips and knowledge that I've gained and I've put into notes form, and the things that I have essentially adopted in my lifestyle to not only put myself ahead, but I think about, I don't know if any of you guys have a family or have children. Um, this day and age, we live in 2025. We're in a world where it's almost like it's almost disappointing in a sense, because you don't see the things that you got to see in the early 2000s. And I'm a 95 kid, so I grew up with just a huge family, being around family, being around friends who was always outside. We were just always active. And now move fast forward to 2025, a lot of that stuff has like went away, at least in my perspective from how I live. You don't see kids going outside playing anymore. You don't see people just commingling. Everyone's all clicked up with their own subgroups, and it's a lot of manipulation and just judgment and just stuff that's just very bot minded, very systematically set up. And it's like that on purpose. But a lot of us don't see that on our day-to-day basis because we're all too worried and dealing with our own day-to-day life. And this is just what I'd be saying, like life be life for everybody. And but how I've kind of categorized it is if you live in America, we all have that same shared stress. We all go through the same things. In this economic system, we just show it differently. We all have a certain mask over our face to where we project, we show happiness, but deep down, we're all going through something inside. And I don't want to get to like weeds with when I said like we're all going through the same thing. Like yes, I understand like our playing field, of like where we came from and who we are is definitely not the same. There's a lot of us who have been set up for success a lot more than others. There's some people who continuously have to work through trauma, trials, and tribulations to just get where they're at, and there are those who are still trying to figure it out and still want to just want more for themselves. So this is kind of like categorize all in one as just a form of understanding. And I want to have you guys look at life and almost in a different perspective, but just and essentially just keep curiosity. So what I'm going to be going in with is what I was saying, like back in 1971, where Richard Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard. That happened August 15th, 1971, where all currencies were denounced from the gold standard. So that's what like just gave the Feds its ability to just continuously print money um, without any proof of what they're holding in terms of gold to make it almost equivalent. And money is just created out of thin air. So what I mean by that is it doesn't take it doesn't take the feds or literally anything to create this money. You just have to have a need for a loan or something that you need in your day-to-day life that requires some type of financing. And this is where like the system and everything kind of plays a factor into that. So let's say you need money to go buy a car. And cars in America range between, I'd say, like 20 on average, 30 grand to 50, 60, 70 grand depending on the car, right? But majority of us don't have that lump sum of money just sitting around. You know what I'm saying? So what we have to do is we have to go through the system. And I can't remember if it's like this credit based system is what it's called, because you have to have a certain type of credit score, and who judges that credit score is the three big credit bureaus, and they give you a specific number, a three-digit number. And all that number just reflects is how trustworthy and how good you are with managing money, in a sense of, are you able to pay it back in a timely manner and not default. And so it kind of starts there. So once you kind of like get into like the eyes of approval, then what they do is they just create the they create the loan. They create the loan for you, based off of the amount of money that you need to go purchase the thing you need. But that literally took nothing away from them to do that. And the moment you get that loan, that cash, which really isn't yours, you still get to go spend it, which gives you that sense of like, I would say like it's like a dopamine hit. It gives you a dopamine and adrenaline to like say like, oh, like I'm doing a big boy or a big girl thing. But the moment you the moment you don't pay back what you borrowed, they can just strip and take that thing away from you like nothing. Um, and that just leaves you high and dry and assed out is how I always think. And excuse me, for my language and stuff, but this is just something I'm very passionate about and real, because my parents don't never taught me any of this. And I'm pretty sure, just like majority of you guys, your parents probably didn't teach you this. And then obviously the school system again does not teach us this, and it's all designed that way on purpose. So yeah, there's that. And so this is how I'm gonna break it down. And again, I have like a lot of notes that I'm gonna keep referencing, that kind of keeps me on track. So how is currency created? Not money, currency. So currency is created by, the government's glorified IOU. It's like it's a bond, but it's just a glorified, like, I'll pay you back later with interest type thing. And the problem with that too is the government likes to spend a little too much, and when they spend, they don't necessarily make enough back to fulfill that promise, which is where we come into play. Is because again, we're constantly in this debt based cycle to where we have to continuously borrow money out of thin air. And and the downside of it the downside of the governments and us borrowing money is that we pay it back in the form of our time, and all that is just paying the interest. But we're constantly borrowing money, because if the United States, if the American economy and system stopped borrowing money, we would default and we would not have enough to operate in this world. Like, our system would just collapse. So just keep that thought in mind, okay? So again, like I said, it starts off with the government creates glorified IOUs, aka bonds, um, that they borrow. Was they borrow, and these treasury bonds are our national debt. So these glorified IOUs are paid back by you and I and our descendants from future taxation. So we're getting taxed. Think about all the taxes that are in place, and especially now in 2025. Like, I think the biggest thing right now is people are starting to see is is this gas tax. At least here in Washington and Oregon, this gas tax is no joke. It's just another form of just robbing you high and dry. So our treasury bonds, like I said, is just our national debt, and these glorified IOUs are paid back by us. And by issuing these bonds is just stealing a lot of our future away from us. And what we don't understand is every time we borrow something, we're sacrificing our future life or our future self to reap the rewards today, not understanding that we have to pay that back plus interest. And again, all that's doing is just robbing our time away, something that we will never ever get back. You can make more money, but you cannot make more time. So please remember that. Okay. Then the treasury holds a large bond auction, which is like the world's largest bank, and they show up and they kind of just compete for um they just compete on buying parts of the national debt, and then they make a profit on it by earning interest. It's just so screwed up. It's so screwed up, but I'm gonna keep going. So big banks, they get their cut in every single process of this transaction. And again, we are like the very, 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 very end of the stick as everyday working class citizens. So you know they end up going through what is called um, open market operations, and that's when the bank gets to sell, part of those bonds to the Federal Reserve for a profit, and then those bonds, they pay the bonds, um, they pay for the bonds that the Federal Reserve opens up in a like is just think about a checkbook, right? So when you have a checkbook, you have to have money in that account to write that check, whether it be to go pay somebody, pay your good or services. You have to make sure that those funds are in the account in order for you to write off that check. But here's the big difference with the government. They have a checkbook with no account, nothing in it, because remember, it's created out of thin air. So they can write off a check for $10 million with nothing in it, but you would think that's considered a bad check because there's no funds. But all they're doing is just, again, creating this money out of thin air. And once they write that check to create this money, what ended up happens is that check ends up going to the hands of the banks, and then that's how money is created. Then the bank takes the currency and goes buys the bonds at the next treasury auction. So what I'll end up kind of trying to do is like put like a little picture somewhere in this video that kind of gives you guys like a diagram of like what I'm trying to talk about, because it's like a constant cycle that just continuously happens every single day, every second of our lives, right? And you'll see how like we are part of this messed up part. So then once you know all this is happening, this process is where all the paper currency comes from, and then that's where this is called deficit spending by the government. And what deficit spending end up happening with is they put that money towards public works. And what public works is like you see people go out there and fixing the roads, um you know um traffic and lights, and just look up the word public works, and then it'll give you guys a nice little breakdown. Social works, and this biggest thing that we are currently dealing with right now, potentially a World War III. This is where our government, the United States, and our money just plays a factor, because we like to be involved with everything and be the what they quote unquote call the peacekeepers. But we essentially are just getting ourselves in a lot of mess. It's just what I want to leave it off with. um you know that depositing your money into an account to be safely held in trust for you. I mean, you aren't depositing your money into an account to be safely held in a trust for you. What they're actually doing is letting the banks pretty much loan out 90% of the money that's in your account. And this is where that's pretty much called like fractional reserve lending. This is where like it kind of opened my eyes of fractional reserve lending back in. So I used to work in a credit union um, in like 2015. I don't want to even like say the name, but those who know me and know where I used to work, then yeah. But I used to have this ideology of thinking like, oh, once I get a banking or credit union type of job, I'm gonna completely understand money. They're gonna teach me everything, this, that, and the third. Not the case at all. If anything, I just saw a lot of, I would say, backwards type of thinking in that atmosphere. But let me just keep going into depth with this. Um, yeah, so you're not pretty much putting your money in an account where you think it's safe. The moment you put your hard-earned cash into a bank or a credit union, you're giving them the right to lend it out 10x, and they're just paying you fractions of a percentage of what you're going to be getting back. So just think like less than 0.01%. So That's fractional reserve lending for you. And again, I would just say just look up the word fractional reserve lending. Here, I'll even break it down to you. So, fractional reserve lending is exactly what it is. The banks are allowed to reserve only a fraction of your deposit and loan out the rest. So, let's say you have $100, right, in your account. Well, they're going to loan out $90 of that $100 and keep $10 in your account. But you don't know that. You just see a number on your in your bank statements and your checking and savings account. Where if you check your account online, you're gonna be like, oh yeah, yep, that money's still there. It's just a number. It's just a digital number to please you psychologically. They don't have it, and that's where you'll understand. And once you kind of get to a higher threshold of cash, like if you try to withdraw more than $10,000, it kind of flags something, and they give you a hassle on trying to withdraw that cash. I've seen it happen several times. I've read about it, and that's why, yeah, I'm gonna just leave it at that. Um, so they put it in a reserve, aka vault cash. That's what it's called, and it's created. What they do is create a bank credit, which is an IOU. Reasons why it's still showing $100 in your account. So commercial banks can create a checkbook of money whenever they grant a loan, and that's just simply by adding new deposit dollars in people's accounts on their books, and in exchange for the borrower's IOU. So that pretty much means that, like I said, fractional reserve lending. All they're doing is lending out $90 of your $100, but it's showing that you still have 100. And as they continuously loan that out, they're just creating more dollars, and they're just circulating this and just creating a currency supply is what they're doing on their books. But in your account, it still shows that you have $100. So, and this is where it kind of gets even more messed up too, is because those numbers that are being created, as far as like the dollars that they are making, we get taxed on that. We get taxed in that process. It kind of like it's kind of hard to not get your feathers ruffled, because the average day to day person literally does not know this, and more so that we just think that the government is here to help us whenever in times of need, if we fall on our butt and we can't pay things. We think that the government has all these systems and programs in place to help you out, when really they're one of the biggest problems in this. But where we fall into play is we lose our time in the process, and we get taxed. So I'm gonna keep saying that too until I'm purple in the face. And we work for that currency supply. We literally do. So our time is being robbed for working for money that's being printed on the screen, and then those numbers represent our blood, sweat, and tears, and our talent, and our ideas. It's crazy. It's crazy, crazy, crazy. And then remember that we took value off of our money back in 1971. So something that used to mean something no longer means anything. Why? It's because they were just constantly printing, printing, printing these dollars. Mm-hmm. And then we, like us, our physical bodies give the value. So if we don't go to work, just like think about it. If none of us, like a collective of just everyone in the working class, just decided to not go to work, this system wouldn't thrive. But they know psychologically that we have mouths to feed and we have needs, and we want to feel a sense of accomplishment. We want to feel like that we're doing something, good and righteous in this world, or what it's called, being law-abiding citizens, and feeling the what's the word, patriotic, right? Because a lot of people believe that paying your taxes is a very patriotic thing to do. That yeah, it's yeah. Because people have, when I say people, I'm talking about everyday working class citizens have a hard time understanding why people of higher wealth, and bigger tax brackets are able to figure out ways to pay little to no taxes legally, and they get very frustrated with that. And this is all before like I had like a big understanding of money. I would just, as a kid, you start seeing adults just, they're always ruffled, they're always mad and upset, especially when it comes to the news. And all the news is, depending on which like news channel that you watch, it's literally designed to keep you in that state of ruffled feathers and just high emotions and just being upset. But whenever you want to have the conversation, about it, it's like it's such a taboo, sensitive, touchy topic, because it goes into the lines of politics, and like if you're voting for the red side or the blue side. And I don't really necessarily want to have my take on politics, because I know what kind of energy that brings, and it's not always good energy. It's not good energy. That's the type of stuff that kind of just like separates and break people's like relationships apart, and have you choose a side when each side, I believe, has its own manipulation and broken promises, because all they're essentially saying is, hey, if you vote for me, I'm gonna be this close to the money printer, and I'm gonna be able to do this for you guys. Or if you vote for me, I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna have all these systems in place that's gonna be for the people to help you guys. When whoever is closest to the money printer at the end of the day, it still falls in some sort of manipulation, that doesn't help the day to day people. So that's all like my take on it. And this is pretty much highway robbery. Our taxes are being used towards roads, schools, public services, and it's really like a small fraction of it actually that's going towards that, because the majority of it is, trying to pay interest on the bonds that our Federal Reserve, um, bought with a you consider like a bad check, because again they wrote this check that came from an account that has nothing in it. So imagine if you and I were to go to, or try and pay someone with a bad check. That shit's gonna bounce, and then you and I are gonna get looked at as crazy, and then that's just gonna stir a whole cycle of problems. But yet the Federal Reserve and the government can do it, and there's no issue at all. Why? Is because that is how our system is created. That's how money is created. And you're going to actually, if you're watching this, then you're going to actually understand and see like how much of, and why I'm so passionate about talking about this, is because this is knowledge that's not forefront in your face. You have to literally question and look at, and keep that curiosity to want to understand and know the path of money, right? So my time's coming short on this one. I'm gonna continue with part three, and yeah, we're just, barely even scratching surface on how all this can lead up to a solution, which you can kind of see that's happening now in 2025, as of, I would say, as of March 7th, but I want to get to that point. So I'm going to end this one, and then I'm going to start back. What's up, y'all? So kind of just continue what I'm saying, like everything that the feds are doing, they're just pretty much committing legal fraud. Like that's really what it is, just straight to it. Like they're just committing legal fraud, and we are a part of it. And if we don't abide by this type of system, then you can kind of see where those negative repercussions start happening towards the everyday, working citizens. This is why, like, you start seeing like why entrepreneurs and business owners get like tax write-offs, and it's because they know how to play the game. And when you think about America, America is nothing but a big business, and that business relies off of our physical efforts to keep money cycling, interest payments being paid in order for us to continuously go, not us, but in order for the government to complete and continue their deficit spending on things that I would say uh, that don't really matter at the end of the day. But that's my personal input with some knowledge that how I kind of just I'm sharing with you guys and putting together. But oh, check this out. So before the feds was created, there was no need for income tax, and the system has owners. And what when I was going through like my deep dive of knowledge, the Federal Reserve is a group of people, like probably like a handful, no more than maybe like 10 or 13 people, if I remember right. Don't quote me on it to be exact. That's why I always say, just do your knowledge and do your research. But the feds is not just like a system. It's literally people, human beings who congregated together and created the Federal Reserve in 1913. And income tax was created in 1913. So keep that in mind. The federals Before feds was created, there was no need for income tax. But in 1913, income tax was created. It was because of these group of people, and it's going to be hard to even figure out who they are. It's because they know how to shell and hide themselves through entities, and these entities are constantly being transferred or sold or moved around. This really is just how like I've understood it, and this is so crazy. And what all this is doing is creating a debt ceiling delusion, because there's interest due on bonds. There's interest due on every loan that the banks have ever made. And there's interest due on every dollar in existence. So this is where I started understanding and looking at like rent, for instance, every 30 days, credit card payment every 30 days, mortgage payment every 30 days. Everything's on a 30-day cycle. So whether if someone that a family member, someone passed away, you just don't, you know, run away from the debt and you just stop paying. Nope, that debt gets transferred on to a family member, whoever's next in line, especially if they don't have, like, I would say, like, their life kind of like set up properly, and in the form of, like, like a trust and all that stuff, to be able to, withstand all this, and which is something that I'm currently in the process of learning. And again, please, I encourage everyone to just do your own research. Self education is going to take you a lot further than the traditional education system, and that's what I'm believe, and that's what I'm gonna say about that. Um, there is never enough currency to pay the debt. There will always be more debt in the system than we have currency to pay the debt, which equates to deficit. The deficit, and it's going to be impossible to get out of, which makes it finite. Um, there's a payment due every month, like I said, on the principal plus interest on every dollar in existence, and the payments will never stop, which is what I was saying. So it doesn't matter if you have student loans. If you die, those student loans are going to go towards your kids if you have any. If you don't have any kids, those student loans are just going to go towards the next person kin to you. Same thing with mortgages. Same thing with anything that requires debt in this system. There's just no running away from it, believe it or not. So this ends up creating a revolutionary war. And I know I'm kind of going fast and I'm bouncing through topics and stuff and I'm saying these things, but ultimately I want all of this to be like a place of where you're actually just starting to think for yourself, to where you can understand the times that you've been living in up until this point. And if you don't have any curiosity, you better start creating some. I really hope this helps, because all I'm trying to do is just, I'm not trying to just sit here and be like a one person changes the world, or I'm trying to be like the ultimate source for anything. I'm just trying to be the source, or like, of just what I'm sharing, and how it's been helping me in my life, and how it's going to help my kids in the long run. And then it, like I said, it's here to bring perspective. Nice little paradigm shift is what I want to call it. But this is all leading up to something that I'm trying to let you guys know, because there is a solution to all this. Believe it or not. And like I said, back in I would say March 7th of 2025, if you've been paying attention or not, a lot of changes have been happening even before then, but it's just the fact that now that our government, um, our president right now, it has kind of at least made some things very just out there for us to. I think we should all pay attention to. Not saying I'm supporting him as a whole, as a person or anything, but just I like to pay attention to the facts at the end of the day. So again, this kind of starts off a revolutionary war. Started as a tax revolt, and we have to pay tax on just to have a monetary system, which is, I don't like that at all. But that it is what it is. You just gotta know how to play the game. Um, the so the founding fathers knew the dangers of a monetary system, and again, just go back and do your research. They knew years before what we as in like the American people, who controlled a lot of the things that we as everyday working human beings are going through on a day-to-day struggle. They've already foreseen all this happening before it happened. So yeah. um they knew that the dangers of a monetary system and a banking system, and fought to avoid all this chaos by writing in the Constitution only gold and silver can be money, for the simple fact that you can't print that. Um, but since we went away with it in 1971, it's been downhill for I would say the American economy since then. hmm And I'm saying that just based off of the knowledge that I have, that I'm gaining. I'm still gaining, because I won't know everything, but anything that I learn, I'll be happy and I would love to share. This is what this whole channel is for. It's just gaining and sharing financial knowledge. But my disclaimer is I'm not a financial advisor yet, so I cannot tell you what to do like with your money or anything. But this is just all for like education and entertainment purposes. So there you go. Nice little disclaimer for right now. Um, yeah, so the decrease in our purchasing power incurred by holders of money due to inflation imparts gains to the issuers of money, which is the Federal Reserve. And the last, I won't say the last step, but the next step of this is that the secret owners take their cut, which are the people in the Federal Reserve. Which is crazy because the Federal Reserve is a company, is a business that has stockholders. So anyone who is pretty much attached to this, they are essentially forever, ever getting paid off of us in some way, shape, or form. When I say us, working class citizens, middle class, lower class. Uh, you can be high upper class, working citizen. You're still part of it. You're just in a different tax bracket. That's it. Um, no federal agency has uh, stockholders, but the Federal Reserve, but the people who are in the Federal Reserve, you know, yeah. So again, so it kind of like breaks down into like going into like the stock market and stuff. Like, what's a stock? So a stock is a share. It's like a piece of a company or a percentage of the pie. So think about this: like you have this big old slice of Domino's pizza, right? And they slice it up and just let's give it like 10 slices, so that way we could just be easy with the numbers, right? And you wanted to take your piece of the pie or your one slice, so that's 10% of that company that you rightfully own, because that's the slice that you want, that's the slice that you have out of that 10 slices, 10%. So a share of a stock is like a piece of a pie or percentage of ownership in a corporation. um, so the stockholders are owners of that said company or corporation, aka, so since the Federal Reserve has shareholders, the owners of the Federal Reserve um, have to, pay out percentages of like dividends to these stockholders. And the thing is, you won't see this because the Federal Reserve is not a publicly traded company. It's a private corporation. So that's why I was saying it's hard to see who are the people that's involved, because it's shelled away on purpose. And I don't there's a book on this that I'm going to eventually get, and I'm going to be able to read more about it, and I'll be happy to share once I actually obtain the book and learn. But just from this, I would say intermediate type of knowledge, this is something that, again, just to bring to the forefront of your mind. And even on their website too, so if you go to like the Federal Reserve website, it says that their stockholders receive an annual, so like yearly dividend of 6%. So they're getting paid off of us left and right, whether you like it or not, and it's 6% every single year. But when you think about the collective of people, lower middle class, upper class people who are all in the system working, that 6%, that number is large. They getting paid, and it's you should be upset. You should be upset because I was too. It was just more so just like a brain burst type of moment, right? And who owns the stock of the Federal Reserve? The stock is issued to the largest banks in the U.S., but with the mergers and acquisitions, who actually are the shareholders, is it's a real close and guarded secret. So, like I said, you won't be able to pinpoint exactly who these people are. It's shelled, so that way you don't know. And the primary dealers, which are the banks, they get to make the profit by selling part of the national debt to bonds, which the Federal Reserve buys off of that blank check from an empty account the bogus check off an empty account, like I was telling you guys. And then we have to pay taxes on the principal and interest of those bonds. And then that interest, the annual dividend, 6% of our time and our blood, sweat, and tears that we just constantly give up, they get that just willy nilly in their account every year, 6%. Like I said, that 6% is a large number when you think about the amount of people who are in this cycle. And there's like another diagram that I have, so I'll make sure I'll try and find a way to like put that in this video so that way you guys can see it, because I'm a visual person too. And once you're able to kind of like see things and kind of like put words to an image, then I think it would just hit that much more. And then so pretty much the system funnels wealth from the working class and transfers it to the government and the banking sector, which in a nutshell creates a corrupt system. So the whole goal at the end of the day is self sovereignty, self education, and protecting yourself, your family, your money, not currency, your money, by storing it in something that's going to keep its value or gain more value over time. And this is where it leads to that solution that I was saying. And that solution is Bitcoin. Now, you can't say Bitcoin is, you know, a scam, which is still confused about money if you break that down, because in 2009, 2010, the creator, Satoshi Nakamoto, we don't know who he or she is, but they created this piece of art, work, just sound money in a way that is built behind technology, energy, power that won't ever go away. They formulated something that is, like I said, is the solution to all of our problems. And this is where like the personal route kind of goes into this, is because I've been in the space of cryptocurrency, but I don't even want to say cryptocurrency anymore, because Bitcoin was, is part of it, but really isn't. It's like its own standalone. Um, I won't even say entity. It's like its own standalone, just proof of work piece of technology. Um, and what I mean by that is, so when he created this, he created only, he or she, the person Satoshi Nakamoto, created 21 million coins to ever be in existence, right? So there's a rarity and there's a scarcity, because there won't be any more once they've all been, I would say, mined. And every 4 years, the mining gets cut in half, so it makes it that much harder to collect Bitcoin and to acquire it. And I don't want to get too far ahead yet, because I want to break this down in a way where it was understood the way I understood it. But how I seen it is, when you think about money and you think about who always has their hands in the cookie jar, there's a lot of multiple factors in between me, money, and you, or said person that you need to go give it to, right? The bank and government is really the biggest chunk that's in between. So I always like to give this example. Um, if I was in Thailand or anywhere near that factor, right, and I actually have a cousin who's in Thailand or who travels overseas a lot, and I'm just using him as an example, even though like I haven't really like sent him any money or anything, but this is still a good example. I'm here in the States, and he needs $10,000 for whatever reason that just helps him out, right? Well, if you try and wire money, it takes days, if not maybe weeks, to get to them. It has to go through all these verification processes with these different entities that play in the factor of whether if you get your money or not. And on top of that, they take fees. Well, with this Bitcoin, it was created with great technology built behind it, and like I said, you don't have to take my word for it. Do the knowledge. It's called proof of work. Okay, proof of work. So what that means is it's a peer-to-peer system with no middleman involved. Zero. Okay, the government does not like that, and I'm gonna tell you why here shortly. So if he needs something, I can send it to him, and he will get it. It was like a small little transaction fee, but it's literally pennies on the dollar compared to what the government is involved with. And he will be able to get it at the speed of light. And once he has it, he'll be able to use it in any way he needs or pleases. Okay? So just keep that in mind. Peer to peer means from me to you with no middleman involved. And that's where I said you don't have to believe me. Believe the proof of work, believe in the technology, and do your own research. And you will understand how just that is already that much better than having banks and credit unions and the government and everyone, in the middle of your business, in the middle of your everything. Because, like I said, the name of the game is self sovereignty, self sufficiency, freedom at its finest, and to be able to do what you want when you want, you know. So yeah, peer to peer Bitcoin is peer to peer, and it's now it well not I wouldn't say as of now, but before like early 2009 2010, no one really knew what it was, but like a few, and those who really believed in the technology since then, you're not going to find them right now because they're living their life. They understood everything that what is being involved in this world before the adoption of cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. So I came across it in like 2017, and I knew exactly what it was just because, well, I won't say I knew exactly what it was, but I knew of it as some type of medium of exchange and something that you can buy and hope it, buy as an asset. And once you have it, you know that your money's going to grow, but then I would sell it for fiat, aka for dollars, for paper currency, because I didn't have the full depth of knowledge behind what I actually had. So I've been in the space since like 2017, messing around with it when I trade in the foreign exchange market, instead of my profits going to said institution where they have to verify and figure out, and me have to wait for me to use my funds. I just convert everything into BTC, Bitcoin, and I'll be able to use it and spend it wherever I so choose. And at the time, I had a Coinbase account, and I remember this is how I knew something was special here. So, let's fast forward to like COVID, like 2019, 2020. I'm traveling to Seattle with my family. Um, and I remember I forgot to flag my cards for travel, and it was just like on a weekend, right? And well, banks and credit unions aren't open on the weekend, and I needed to use my cash, and like because we were all hungry, we needed something, but I couldn't use my card because they flagged it. I didn't flag it for travel, so they pretty much shut my card off. They shut the way I can access my funds off until the next business day, to where I have to call them, verify, let them know like, yes, this is me. I'm here. I'm going to be here for this long. I just have to give so much information in that process to use what's mine. But I was smart enough to have what is called like a Coinbase debit card. So that's just strictly like a debit card to where like if you need your to use your funds, then you can because it's tied to your cryptocurrency account. And at that time, I was invested in like XRP, Ethereum. I had some Bitcoin, but I was able to cash, my cryptocurrency, my Bitcoins and my Ethereum into what's called a USDC coin, which is pretty much America's stable coin. And I was able to still, going about my life with ease because I had funds in this system, in this type of digital economic system without any issue. I was able to just continuously go about my day, and that's how I knew I had something special. And but yet the whole world wasn't really well, like the general masses. I can't speak for everyone, but people who've known about this and believed in the technology long before me, like I said, you're not going to find them, and if you do, it'd be very, very rare because they're living their lives right now, like to the fullest, and that's what I'm trying to lead up to. Is just the self sovereignty and how Bitcoin literally can make your life easier. So all I'm trying to say is you're going from a centralized system, the banking system, where you need permission, you have to give verification, you want your social name, date of birth, all this, that, and the third, all this information that they have the power to shut you down and shut you off and keep you from your accounts if they so choose, because if they don't like what you're doing for any reason. And I never really understood that still at that point in time, but as I started reading and doing my education with, people who were in the space, and I would say in a lot bigger and positions that I want to be in, they've constantly said how they've been debanked, kept from their money and just stripped high and dry, right? That don't sound fun or right to me, and I know that probably don't sound right to you either. And if it does sound right to you, then yeah, I think you got some issues, personally, but I ain't here to judge. Hey, we here to we speak, we listen, and we don't judge. So essentially, what I realized I was in was called a DL, like a decentralized economic system. That's what pretty much cryptocurrency is. So we're gonna end it off on decentralized technology right now, and I'm gonna be able to pick this up right after this here. So I'm gonna end this one and I'm gonna start again.